Good morning. I'm Eric Masters, and welcome to Money and Politics. Today is July 5th, 2024, Friday. The information that I'm going to present to you in this podcast series is to inform you about the role that money plays in federal elections and in federal lobbying. We'll focus initially on federal elections and then turn to lobbying. The focus today is on the role of money over time, and more specifically in the year 2024, which is really the 2023-2024 federal election cycle, which is a two-year presidential election cycle. The data that I'm presenting are from the website of Open Secrets. You can go to the link there and capture all this data for your own review. The topics that we'll cover today include the total cost of federal elections, the money raised by candidates and parties participating in federal elections, outside money, what outside money means, and the spending trend over the past several years, dark money and what dark money means and its spending trend over the past several years, and Trump and Biden's fundraising thus far in 2024. The costs of federal elections in presidential election cycles, which are two-year election cycles between 2000 and 2020, the last year for which there was a presidential election cycle, you can see that the contributions have grown from slightly under $6 billion to over 16 billion, actually over $16.4 billion in the two-year election cycles during this period. $16.4 billion sounds like a lot of money, and indeed it is, but let's put it a little bit into perspective. The gross domestic product of the United States at this time is well over $28 trillion. The 16.4 billion is a sliver of that amount. Federal budget expenditures for this fiscal year are $6.8 trillion, which far exceed the amount spent on federal elections. And Microsoft's sales and marketing spending for the year 2023 is nearly $23 billion, which is far more than the $16.4 billion spent in federal contributions by various individuals and groups in the 2020 federal election cycle. Thus, in comparison, I think you can see that our election spending should not alarm us. What should alarm us is what effect this election spending might have on policy, and there's no doubt that it has a significant effect. But even more important is the total role of government in society and the amount of money it spends. And that's why people will spend money to influence elections, because there's a huge transfer of wealth through government programming at the federal level in particular, but also at state and local levels. The amount raised by political parties, presidential candidates, candidates for the United States House of Representatives, and candidates for the United States Senate in this election cycle at this point in time in 2024, which also covers the amount raised in 2023. And these are candidates who have run in primaries and are running now in the general election, as well as parties who raised in the primaries and are raising in the general election. Total over $5 billion thus far, with the parties comprising nearly half of that, a little bit over $2.4 billion in money that they've raised so far. Federal election spending by major functional category for this election cycle, which again is not complete yet. There will be a lot more spending between now July the 5th and Election Day and thereafter in this year. But spending on media by individuals and organizations combined amounts to about 25% of the money. Fundraising is about 20%. Administration pays for people to administer the various political activities that are being financed is a little bit over 15%, and salaries are about 14%. It's important to realize that federal campaign contributions finance a lot of vendors and they finance a lot of individuals whose income depends heavily on being paid by their participation in the electoral process. The top 10 federal election donors are listed here in 2024 election cycle. These are really, to a large extent, cutout groups that are created to contribute money, both hard money to some extent, and moreover, outside money, which we'll talk about in a minute. And you can see they're usually split in terms of how they give their money between Republicans and Democrats, being lopsidedly devoted to one party or the other. Business, labor, and ideology split. Business participates in politics and can spend unlimited amounts in certain political activities, as can labor in various ideological groups. You can see that business, for a grand total in 2023-2024 thus far, has spent over $2.6 billion in contributions to federal candidates and parties, making it by far the largest group among this set. Labor's spending contributions in this regard are paltry, just $114.6 million compared to $2.6 billion for business. The ideological spending comes out somewhere between these two groups on the lower side, about $550 million. Soft money is money spent by non-parties, and they are groups and individuals that donate money to a variety of political activities, which may or may not have to be reported in terms of who is actually doing the funding and how the money is spent. It depends upon the nature of the organization that is doing the spending and the purpose for which it is being spent. But a lot of money, and these include super PACs, can make unlimited contributions through these organizations to support candidates through issue advertising, electioneering communications, and other electoral activities. Outside spending trends are shown here. They peaked in 2000, coming close to $3 billion. The figures yet are not complete for 2024, and we'll have to see what that looks like as the year ends. Dark money is money that is put into the political process whose donors don't have to be disclosed. There are a lot of nonprofits called 501c organizations that are not under legal obligations to disclose their donors. They may be reported to various extents in forms that they file with the Internal Revenue Service, and that can give you some idea of where their money may come from. But they are not reported to the Federal Election Commission. And again, this is unlimited amount of money that it can spend on certain activities, such as advocating for a particular issue or advocating for a candidate. They do have to report spending on the latter as you approach an election within 60 days of a general election. That has to be reported to the Federal Election Commission. The upshot of this, you can see outside spending with no disclosure of donors. This is probably an underestimation of that total amount of outside spending. What is problematic about federal election campaign activities, from understanding what's going on in the process, it's often very hard to tie what an individual may contribute to a campaign or to the political process to the actual way in which that money is spent by the time it gets filtered through 2 or 3 organizations. It's almost like money laundering. There's nothing illegal about it per se. People are complying with the law, but the law makes it difficult to tie the money that is being spent to the individual who actually contributed or the organization that actually contributed. And that makes it difficult to determine who's wielding the influence in the political process. Candidate money, you can see President Biden and President Trump, former President Trump, the amount of money that they've raised so far in this election cycle from candidate committees. Biden has raised more than Trump, 231 million to 196 million. Outside money, Trump has raised more than Biden, 193 million, thereabouts, to 158 for Joe Biden. I'll bring more you information about the political process and how it works to try and keep you informed about the mechanics of financing elections and also lobbying to influence lawmakers. I'm Merrick Masters. I hope you will subscribe to my YouTube channel, Merrick Masters on YouTube, where you can find a variety of other podcasts about topics such as labor news at work, Nixon's the One, a video documentary about Nixon's 1968 campaign, the UAW Organizing Watch, which focuses on the efforts of the United Auto Workers to organize non-union auto companies in the U.S., and also Presidential Election Watch, which monitors events and polling in this 2024 presidential election year. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day.